We've named the top 40 fan favorites in Peoria Rivermen history. We're talking to one of them right now. And before we start, we want to let everybody know this conversation is presented by Ameren, Illinois. You can get reliable energy for your home every day. Visit amerenillinois.com/reliability to learn more. All right, we're talking to former goaltender Kyle Rank here. Spent 3 years and 115 games in a Rivermen jersey, including a trip to the 2016 President's Cup Finals. Kyle, the fans had over 200 names to select from. You were one of the 15 names voted in to join the top 40 fan favorites in Peoria history. So let's just start right off with that, man. How does it feel to be honored like this?
It's an honor. You and I were talking a little bit off camera before, and it was never my intention to be a fan favorite. When I came in through probably the trade heard around the world in the SPHL history, probably for a bag of pucks and a couple hotel rooms, I just wanted to do a really good job. I just wanted to show that I could still play, and I wanted to show Guy, who traded for me, that I could play. And at the end of the day, I guess it worked out because I was one of the fan favorites, but, just trying to treat everybody with respect. Every fan that walked up to me wanted to shake their hand, try and get to know them just a little bit. Just trying to be a good person in that respect. And so I am really honored that people still think of me when they think of the Peoria Rivermen.
It's pretty cool, too, because goaltenders get a lot of love in this city. And just looking at a couple of the other names that are going to join you, and as fans probably know, and I talked with you about this before we started, there's going to be a home game at some point during the 2021-22 SPHL regular season that all 40 of these names are going to be honored by being stitched into a jersey collage. So we will have 40 photos of these top 40 fan favorites all in one jersey. There's going to be a post-game jersey auction for it, too. It's going to be awesome. And Kyle, your image is going to be pasted in somewhere along the likes of Curtis Joseph, of Jake Allen, of Ben Bishop, guys that have gone on, in some cases, to win Stanley Cups.
Thanks for probably rubbing it in. You know what I mean? Thanks for that. And I'm not sure what photo you're going to use, if it's going to be one on the ice or me sitting here with this mustache, but, I'm going to be very honored that hopefully, I'm only I don't know how tall. I know Ben Bishop is a monster, right? And Jake Allen's pretty tall too. Don't put me next to them. I don't think I'm that tall.
We're not using life size. So
okay, good. So then blow mine up, blow up the picture a little bit.
It would make more sense if we just did half your body on one of the goaltender's leg pads and the other half on the other.
Yeah, there we go.
Rivermen.
Probably how tall I am. I'm probably the size of one of Ben Bishop's legs at this point.
Well, you were able to make it work, though. I mean, your career was unbelievable in 3 seasons. You mentioned the trade heard around the world. I'm going to get to that later. But I'd be remiss if the fans weren't informed. We see the big mustache. That's maybe a bit different for them. So what's been going on? You retired in 2016. What are you doing to stay busy?
Yeah, so right when I finished playing, I moved down here to beautiful, revered Pensacola, Florida, is where I call home now with my wife, Kelly. And, I went into strength and conditioning and kind of worked my way up through the system through a couple internships. And now I'm the assistant director of the University of West Florida Strength and Conditioning Department. I work with a handful of athletic teams, and all I try and do every day is really influence them, helping them be better people, kind of telling them and sharing some of my experiences that I've had over the years of whether it was in collegiate or pro, to try and help them just improve themselves, not only from a physical capacity, but from just, a personal perspective as well, trying to get them to be a little bit better people after they leave.
It's amazing too, hearing that you say, you're in Pensacola. I think a few people know that, yeah, it's an interesting place to be living now, given how everything wrapped up. You look back and I promise you, we're going to be talking good times here. But there's a couple other things in the middle there. At the time of this recording, we're a couple days removed from the 5-year anniversary of Game 3 between Peoria and Pensacola, the dreaded last-second goal, whether it was in before the buzzer went off or not. I would think you might be one of the best set of eyes to tell us. Obviously, it doesn't really matter now in the grand scheme of things, but take me back to that moment, because as I look back and in preparation for this, there's an article by the Peoria Journal-Star, David Minion, well-beloved guy. And in that article where he's talking to you after you announced to retire, you say that, the only regret you have is not winning a championship, and you call it a personal defeat. Does it still feel this way as we look back on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. I think when it can, you can look at stat lines, you can look at the numbers and all that other stuff, but if you don't win a championship, every year, especially with the pedigree that we had year in and year out, for those 3 years with Peoria, it always will feel like a defeat. You'll always kind of feel like you didn't achieve the main goal of winning a championship. So I know from a personal perspective, I feel like a lot of my best hockey, in my 3 years was not played in the playoffs. So for me, it was a real big personal defeat when we lost against Pensacola, because I think that year everyone kind of had that twinkle in their eye, knowing we had something special going on, and the fact that we just couldn't pull it out was heartbreaking.
So again, I don't know. Like I said, it doesn't probably matter anymore. But when I came to Peoria, I did as much as I could in the 1920 season to sort of dissect it and know where this team had been and all the ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And this goal is infamous, not just in the SPHL era, but the entirety of the 40-year history of pro hockey in Peoria. Do you think it went in before the buzzer?
Yeah, it went in.
Okay.
We watched it. We watched it plenty of times. We watched it over and over again, hoping we could do something to get that time back. And every time we slowed it down, we watched it a little bit. I think it went in. It's tough to say. You don't want to say it at all.
Right.
Like, you don't even want to utter the words yes, but I think it did.
Well, going back now, as we'll get to the happier side of things. What's cool about this voting opportunity that fans had is they could have picked anybody out of those 200 names, including right ends, IHL, ECHL, the American Hockey League, and of course the SP. You were one of 3 players to be voted in from the SPHL era. The other 2 guys pretty well, I think, Alec Hageman, Ben Escroba.
Yep.
What do you think of when it comes to those guys? Because you were on a lot of road trips together.
Man, I love those guys. They're great. They're great guys. It was awesome to hear, when Alec was going to come down here to Pensacola for the season, because you guys weren't playing. I thought I was really going to be able to kind of reconnect with him and talk to him a lot. But obviously with like restrictions, them trying to stay within their bubble, it doesn't really happen. It didn't really happen. But if there was other, I don't think there would have been 2 better guys to be voted in by fans, than those 2. Obviously, Alex, a local talent, with the passion to play, and he's still playing at a high level, and you've seen him develop over the course of his career. And then with Ben, like, I don't think anyone liked anybody more than Ben liked everybody, right? So he never really had a bad bone in his body unless he was playing you, right? So, there's no shock that those 2 are up there on the list, with the guys that were voted in through that SPHL era.
Yeah, Ben's with you now too on the retired player side of things, but he's a great guy. You're spot on with that. He's nice to everybody that comes by him. It's cool too, because when you look at those names and you look at the backstory, you mentioned Hageman. He's a hometown guy, played for the Peoria Mustangs, came back. He's a Rivermen lifer, and he's only with Pensacola probably for the obvious reason of not being able to play. Ben made a home in Peoria, 7 seasons there. He had more games as a defenseman than any SPHL D-man with that team. And there comes your story, the trade. It's listed as, what would you call this in baseball? Cash considerations. I mean, it's
future. I think it was future considerations. Was what I was. It was future considerations.
Right, which AKA is the Fayetteville Fire Ants getting hotels covered by the Rivermen when they come to Peoria.
Yep.
So I'm curious about that. Again, it's an infamous trade for Fayetteville, I think. But does that ever motivate you as a player, or is that just sort of like, you read into the writing of what a reporter wants to say? But does it motivate you? Like, that's what you're going to trade me for? I'll show you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I asked to not be traded to Peoria specifically.
Wow.
So when I heard that I was going to be traded, I went in. And I met with the coach, and he said, "Hey, just to let you know, we're going to try and trade you, because I just got sent down from being up in a call up." And, he's like, "Hey, I don't think you'd ever be a number 1 goaltender in the league. I don't think you're going to be a number 1 guy." And I was like, "Oh, okay. He's like, do you have any place that you would want to go? And I can look to trade you there. And I was like, not, yeah, I do. You know, there's the obvious reasons for coming down a little bit more south from Fayetteville, like a place like Pensacola. I was like, I'll go back to Knoxville if I could. I was like, but I don't want to go to Peoria. He's like, why not? I was like, it's cold up there. Yeah. I don't want to go back. Right. So I came from the North. I was a Northern kid, and I didn't play hockey outside of Boston and lived in Canada. And I was like, I don't want to go back to the cold. It sucks. But then I think he might've taken that to heart and said, let me send you over there. So he did.
Man, you know, another thing that had to have sucked about Peoria at the time is the travel. Like, boy, was I lucky that Quad City and Evansville were in the league, and now we're going to get the Vermilion County Bobcats. I mean, there was like nowhere close for the Rivermen.
No, I think we still had Bloomington
right.
in the league, but you know, we played them so many times. Like it gets, you know, when you do that, sometimes it just gets a little stale. The rivalry gets a little stale. But yeah, the travel was super long. The bus, like you could probably ask Scrobes and Hags about Bronco Brad and some of our epic bus rides, but you know, those are some really, really long trips, and you know, it wears on you. But if you look at what we did on the road, we were, you know, Peoria's always been road warriors, going to and from some places. So, you know, a lot of times friendships and team camaraderie is built on the road. And I think that's why you always had a lot of success coming out of Peoria, is we were just always road warriors.
Well, the other thing too is Peoria's got this, just this legacy there. And, you know, it's funny. I also wonder if some fans would rescind their votes for you, knowing that you wanted to go anywhere but Peoria. But here's the thing, and I don't know about you, it's different for everybody. When I got there as a broadcaster, it was like walking around the arena and the concourse and seeing the Wall of Fame. And then when you go out into the Arena Bowl, seeing from my view and from the Rivermen Tunnel, it would be the top left in the arena, and you can see Blaine Fitzpatrick hoisting the Kelly Cup. You can see the American Hockey League badge. Just knowing what this building has seen, knowing the history that surrounds this team, I felt like, for me at least, there was a sense of like a gratitude that we're even able to be there and be a part of that. Does that at any point, from a player perspective, does it ever come in, like you get past the emotions of, all right, well, I got to go to Peoria, I guess. And then you start looking around and realizing, like, all right, maybe there's something special here.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the first one to admit the fact that I played hockey, but I didn't watch hockey. I didn't follow it. I didn't follow players. So for me, Peoria was just another place. And it was a place that was vastly different from where I came from. So that's realistically probably the biggest reason why I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I want to go there. But when I got there and you felt just the pure class that would emanate from that organization, you felt the history even when you walked in the facility, you felt the history of the Peoria Rivermen. Like immediately, that is then a place you want to be, and you want to call home too. You know, once I walked in, like I couldn't have been accepted better by fans, by players, by the coaching staff. It was just so impressive on how that organization was run and is still run, along with the history just behind now 40 years of Rivermen hockey, how the city came together and people came together to save the team, to make sure there was still hockey. Like you couldn't, I don't think I could have dreamed of going to a better place. I don't think if I would have played anywhere else, I would have done as well, because you get backed by those individuals, by the city, and you almost start to play for something more. And eventually you do. You do play for more. You do play for the city of Peoria. You do play for the fans. You do play for the Rivermen wheel. Like it truly becomes part of who you are. And it becomes way more special after that.
I think a lot of that too has to do with the nature of the locker room, the leaders in there, but also, as you mentioned, the coaching staff. Jean-Guy Trudell has been there since the genesis of Peoria into the SPHL, but he had played there in the AHL and the ECHL. So what was it like having him as your coach? He's the winningest coach now in Rivermen history. And going back again, looking at some of the quotes over the time of your game recaps, press releases, what have you, you know, anytime he is asked about you, he said he could always rely on you. That was he was able to be calm knowing who was in the crease that night. So what was it like playing for Coach Trudell?
He's demanding. I will say that for a fact. He's demanding, but he demands that you bring your best. He doesn't think of anything unrealistic. He doesn't want you to he doesn't have grandiose ideas of who he wants you to be. You know, I think him and I spoke one time, you know, during the season, and he's like, I don't, and I could be paraphrasing, but he didn't want anyone as short as I was. He thought, you know, he doesn't trust small goalies, and, you know, look how that kind of turned out, because of how demanding he was and how I was able to play for him. I've played for very demanding coaches in the past. But there's a sense of with his demands comes like a sense of satisfaction and gratification when you do play well, because he is very also quick to praise when you do play well, right? So it's kind of like that double-edged sword of, you know, him being demanding, but also like he's always going to try and put you in a position to succeed, so you do play well, and then he's very quick to reward that as well. So he's a great balance as a coach. He's done it all as a player, so he knows how it all goes. And, you know, for him, just like everybody else, he's just trying to figure out what buttons to push in order to make the team, you know, roll and come together. And I think he just does such a great job of it. Team, you know, helping create team camaraderie, helping do the little things to help make sure the team succeeds.
Let's talk a little bit in a wider scope about not just Peoria, but the SPHL as a whole. You were already in the league prior to Peoria coming down from the AHL. So what was it like from the time you started to the time it ended? You know, 2016, you retired. All I've heard is how the league has just continued to get better and better and better. Obviously, even now, this season, probably the best ever with all-star rosters. You go from 10 to 5 teams. That's just naturally going to happen. But what did you think about the SPHL, especially because you're one of the, I want to say, sort of more rare stories, given that you were a D1 kid over at Bentley University. This league produces a lot of players that come from the D3 ranks. What was it like to come from that to the single A unaffiliated league?
The league has definitely grown. You know, I think the want to play more hockey at the professional level is continuing to grow, especially for people that are coming from D1s. You're getting a lot more now than when I started. Mm-hmm. And I think that just goes like the perception of the league has also changed a lot. And I think with the perception of the league, you'll start to always continually get better players. When I started, it was, you know, I knew a guy that was playing, and, you know, I called him up, and, you know, he got me in touch with his coach. So, you know, got me down for a tryout after I was done playing. And, you didn't have a lot of D1 guys, but you had a lot of talent. But the perception of the league was always that it wasn't. And sometimes those guys took that to their advantage and might not have produced the way they should have, or might not have been as talented as they maybe have could have. But now as you're getting more players wanting to continue to play at the professional realms, and you're seeing guys, you know, go from the SP to the coast and staying there, going from the SP to the coast to the A and staying there. You're going to have more people that want to play. And where this league used to not be in a good position to develop players for the next level, I think they've really come around and embraced the fact that they can develop these kids. And they're not just there to entertain fans. They're there to develop these kids and to move them on to the next level. So you're going to get higher caliber players playing at every league, every league. So I think it's really been a huge step forward, especially I think, you know, looking back and thinking back, and, you know, because I still go to games every time Peoria was coming down to Pensacola. I'd go to their games, and you kind of always see everybody continually moving up and getting better. And I really, you know, thinking back and playing and watching, you know, really started probably my second to last years. You find this kind of shift in the tides, to have this higher caliber player play in this single A unaffiliated league.
You know, once you get out of the two-piece stick rule, it becomes a little bit more real, right?
Yeah, see, that was my bread and butter, though. Two-piece sticks, shots weren't as hard.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, it took it way long to get to me. You know, as I got older, reaction times went down, so I was really relying on that 2-piece stick roll to stay in place. And you know, once they announced that, it was, you know, no coincidence that I retired that same year, I guess.
Well, and I actually did want to just segue into that. You were 29 years old when you retired, which is a pretty normal age in the SPHL for guys. You know, if you get past 30, that's usually right around the curtain call. But one of the things that you attribute to retiring is not only business opportunities like where you have right now, but sadly, injuries, concussions, things like that. Was the SPHL kind of a scary league to play in prior to that shift? It just feels
no. I wouldn't say so. You know, yeah, it got rough. I would say at times there were definitely some rough times that happened in the SPHL, but you know, I wouldn't say that in any given time that I was like scared for my health. You know, I don't think so. I think again, the perception definitely has changed this league, where you know that kind of run and gun bruiser attitude might have been there for a bit, but you know, by the end of my career, definitely wasn't there. You know, it was just, you know, unfortunate incident that happened that led to me to have to kind of call it quits.
You know, it's funny though, because as you said, the run and gun style, I mean, one thing that everybody looks at across the pro hockey landscape is fighting, and how that is sort of going with the dinosaurs now more and more. Now, as a goaltender, there aren't as many opportunities to fight, but you see a lot of them. I'm sort of asking you, I guess, a broad question here, but what's your stance on fighting? I love hearing it from former players, be it defensemen, forwards, goaltenders. I think as the broadcaster's angle that there's still a place for it. It needs to be in the game, because if not, there's going to be more that players will not be held accountable for. So why wouldn't they? If you have that one run and gun guy, why wouldn't he take the unnecessary jab? You're not going to be able to do anything about it. Do you feel that way, or do you think, you know, we are going to get to a point where fighting's done?
Honestly, I think hockey's in it's a unique sport where this tradition of fighting has been around for a very, very long time. But also it's in a unique sport in terms of its demands and how the game is played. You know, you look at other sports and they have their own way of keeping those things in check. In hockey, it's fighting. Like when you have a very physically demanding, high contact sport, you're going to have people that start to take liberties throughout the course of the game. And when all you're doing is moving around on very sharp blades on the bottom of your feet, and you're holding what some people would consider in other realms a weapon in your hands, you're going to have to find a way to keep some individuals in check. And I think that's where fighting will belong and will always continue to belong in the game of hockey. I think that it should be, you know, continually be part of the game of hockey. I think that's what makes hockey unique. That's what, again, keeps people from staying out of line is to know that that's a possibility. But I definitely think they've made great strides and to try and make it a safer environment for those individuals to do their job in terms of fighting. You know, whether it was, I remember when I was first in the league, you could take your helmet off right before you fought. And, you know, that was everywhere in pro hockey. You could everyone took their helmet off so they could fight. And then we used to not even wear helmets, you know, in warm-ups. You did not have to wear a helmet in warm-ups. So, you know, they've continually made strides to make sure that they protect the players, which I think is very, very important. But I just don't think you can get rid of something that not only has so much history in the game of hockey, but is really one of the only ways to keep people kind of in check from doing a lot of stupid things. Yeah,
I'm all on board with that. So some fans may or may not know this, and here we'll get it from the horse's mouth. You attempted to make a return a couple seasons ago, I believe.
No.
No,
I did not.
Your last game was with the Rivermen, but if you look at your profile, you did at some point say, okay, well, 3 years later, I might go into Pensacola, and that didn't happen. Are you set the story
No.
straight for us?
I'm obviously I live here, right? So if they have people that called up, get hurt, they have someone in their backyard that can at least at this point, I'm just gonna call it holding my own in practice, or at least just not looking like a pylon just standing there, right, in practice. So that was the situation. They called me up. They said, hey, we had a guy go down. It's only going to be about a week, so if you could step in and practice with us for a week and just dress for games, we'd really appreciate it. And, at the time, I could make it work with my work schedule, so I did it. I wouldn't say it was me making a comeback, even though I felt pretty good. It felt good to get back out there, but I don't think I would call it a comeback.
Would you call yourself an e-bug at that point?
Yes, I would say probably, at least in terms of SPHL hockey, a very decorated e-bug, but I wouldn't say that it was a comeback of any kind.
Okay, so because you're still down there, though, if that situation came up again and they called, would you take the opportunity if it worked in your schedule?
Yeah, absolutely, I would. Absolutely. It's for me, it's just fun to get back out there and play with some level of competition, kind of mix, rub elbows with some of the younger kids that are coming up through the game. It's always fun. Like over the last couple of years, like last year, pre-COVID era, I dressed for a handful of practices as well with Pensacola until they got some guys coming down moving around from what they were doing, and it's fun to kind of, there were still some individuals on the team that played when I played, and then there was a lot of new people that were like, who is this old, I'm not an old guy, but who is this old guy, coming in, with these Peoria Rivermen pads, like, who is this guy, right? So it's always fun to kind of see the mixed reactions and be able to kind of be around the environment that I love in terms of the game of hockey.
Now, when you say the Peoria Rivermen pads, were those the pads you were using, the one where the logo, like,
yeah, heck yeah. Haven't given those up. I've been asked many, many times. I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten for people to try and buy those off me. And I was like, no, I can't. Those are a part of history. They're a part of my history, and they're here to stay.
Those are awesome. So, okay, well, what would happen now? I'm going to stop hazing you about this, but what would happen if Rod Aldoff looked at you and said, hey, you got to go tonight. Like, you got to be in net tonight. And now it's like, all right, I'm not practicing, I'm playing. Two questions. One, would you do it? I'm going to assume yes. And two, would you wear the Pensacola jersey at a home game or away game with those Peoria Rivermen pads, or would you try to make something else work?
They've asked me, right, not to play, but, I remember I was dressing for a couple games, home games. Actually, it was one year their kid went down in training camp, so I had to actually suit it up for the home opener and be on the bench for the home opener. And Greg Harris, their owner, came up and he's like, hey, like, we got to have some other pads in storage. You want to put those on, so you don't wear those? And I was like, no, why would I do that? Right. So if they called me and they said, hey, I need you to play tonight, I would. I would probably need a lot more ibuprofen before and after the game to get me through and hopefully hold me together. And also to your second point, I would definitely wear those pads as well.
I think, well, that's an homage to the Rivermen fans to let us know that you didn't forget. So last thing I'll ask about this, I'm having too much fun going on this hypothetical path with you. So that way everybody knows that if it does happen, we can say, well, right here, we addressed it. All right, are you a guy that has a bit of an ego? You don't strike me as one, but some guys do, or that sense of pride. And I ask that because in this hypothetical world where they need to give you the start, doesn't matter who it's against, and your first game back in 5 years, it's a 36 save shutout. Is there the ego of like, yeah, you can put me in net tomorrow too?
Nope. I guess I'll just have to retire from Pensacola, I guess. I'm definitely not. I don't think I'm going to want to play again. I don't think my body would hold up at that point. I know it hasn't been that many years removed, but, it's the game of hockey takes a toll on you. And, it's like a moving wheel. Once you stop moving, everything starts to break down a little bit more. So yeah, I don't think I'd ask. I definitely wouldn't ask to play again.
Well, I'll tell you right now too, and I don't think this is that big of a spoiler because there's some whispers about it, and I can let the fans know here too. There are talks because of this being the 40-year anniversary that if we're talking later in the year, like toward the end of the season, so it would be in 2022, that if the border restrictions ease up for Canadian alumni and alumni outside of North America, obviously people statewide too, there are talks about a potential alumni game. So if you got the call there, would you take it?
Yeah, I would love. I've been talking to Guy almost every year to try and make myself, back up to Peoria. But just unfortunately, like the weekends we chose and stuff like that, and whatever ones work best for you guys, it just didn't work out for me. So, if there was an alumni game, I'd love to come back up and suit back up and kind of show them what SPHL era Rivermen were all about.
That would be cool. We're talking about, because how neat would it be though, even for you? I know I meant the Allen and Bishop references earlier, but wouldn't that be kind of neat though? Like you're taking shots from, maybe on one hand, Ben Escoba's throwing a slap shot from the point I doubt he's doing a slap shot in an alumni game, but Ben Escoba's shooting it, and then it's tipped in front by Guy, and then the rebound, you have to deny Dave Tomlinson, who won a Turner Cup with them back in the 90s. I mean, isn't that kind of stuff so neat? I know you said you didn't necessarily watch hockey, but coming to Peoria, you see the players, about the history. I think those elements make an alumni game like that can't miss.
Yeah, I just think it's, anytime you have an alumni game, especially when you have multiple generations of multiple different people, the atmosphere is just always going to be so much fun, right? Because everyone's going to have their own unique stories about how things went, especially with, the development of the city over the last 40 years and how it's come together for hockey. I think it'll just be so much fun to just be able to talk to those guys, share their experiences, and then just, play a little bit of hockey and have a little bit of fun.
Kyle, we've been having a lot of fun on here. I'm going to let you go soon, but let's just ask one last question in general. Mm-hmm. We've talked about the fans. We talked about Escoba and Hags, Trudell. Anybody else from that SP era that you'd want to give a shout out to? Do you have any funny stories, any memories to leave us with here? We've been doing.
Yeah. So man, probably too many funny stories, and probably not enough that I could talk on a Zoom call about. But there were definitely, guys like Cole Rui, who was our captain for a year and 2 years and was just a warrior. I still keep in touch with him because he's down here in Florida. Just everybody. I miss the crap out of all the years that we spent in Peoria because there were just so many memories, so many good times. Like everyone was just always so welcoming. All the way from, the fans and the boosters, a lot of what we did was impossible for the staff. And I can't, if anybody thanks them enough. So if there's anyone that can do it, I will. So just the people in the front office, like Andrew and Katie, Andrew's not there anymore, but, just to help put all of this together and to keep hockey in Pensacola going from them in the front office staff, and Bart, who does a phenomenal job with the team, all the way to the booster club and all those boosters. Like they were always so welcoming to every single person that walked through that door. And a lot of what we did in terms of being able to keep hockey and being able to play the game we love, we couldn't do without them. So I don't know how many people, thank them for what they do, but so I just wanted to make sure that I formally thank them for everything that they did, to help not only keep hockey in Peoria, but realistically to make my life better, because I did end up going to the place that I didn't want to go to.
It's amazing how life works out, isn't it?
Yeah, now I'm in Pensacola, so it truly is amazing the way that the world turns.
Well, this has been a conversation with Rivermen alumni goaltender Kyle Rank. Kyle, as you thank them, I'll end it by, on behalf of them, thanking you for all the service you did for 3 years in Peoria. And hey, you never know. Maybe we'll see you, hopefully not in a game against the Ice Flyers, but if we do, we'll try our best. And then otherwise, maybe we'll see you in 2022 for an alumni game. Who knows? But either way, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it, and thank you to the fans for voting me. You know, I was joking. You know, during this whole thing goes on, I was like, "There's no chance, right?" And so obviously there was, and so I want to thank everybody for vote. You know, to keeping the memory of what we did in Peoria still in their heart, minds, and myself as well. So thank you.